Hello and welcome to the first podcast from Christians United for Israel UK. I'm glad you can join us. My name is Alastair and I'm with Alex.
Hello.
And in this first podcast, we are going to be talking about a number of issues regarding Israel. We're going to be talking about some very important information that we need to know about Iran.
Yes.
And also giving some insight into the latest regarding some tensions in Israel.
Yeah.
But this is our first podcast. You looking forward to it?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
We're ready to go. Well, Alex and I are, we produce much of the content here at CUFI UK.
Yep.
And every Monday we have a discussion and we, after the weekend, and first of all, we just catch up on things like family, church and faith, sport, the three pillars of society, really.
Yeah.
And then we get straight into talking about Israel and some of the latest things in the news. And we do that because it's important that we are aware of what's happening, but also it helps us really just to be able to understand the angle that we're taking from in CUFI, and also to be able to equip us best when doing our campaigns.
Yeah, and it helps us to kind of run ideas off each other to better understand things, I think.
Yeah.
I think it helps.
It does help. And so actually having that understanding of what is happening, it really does help us also in our content production, our article writing, etc. But to do that, it is a bit of a process, and we have to try and understand what is happening.
Yeah.
So we thought that for the first time, we would invite you into that discussion. We're not talking about family and sport and etc. We're going to get straight to these issues and sharing some of the latest things which are happening regarding Israel.
Yeah.
And we are here today on Monday, obviously very concerned about what has happened over the weekend, particularly yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday there was another terror attack that took place. Two Israeli civilians were gunned down, killed in cold blood. Palestinian terrorist is on the run after committing that atrocity. And that has then sparked even more tension and violence between Israelis and Palestinians, and it's been an ongoing thing for the last few weeks, really.
Because these things normally have a knock-on effect. I mean,
yes,
we hear on the news this morning about the terror attack which took place yesterday with those two young Jewish men that were murdered, and of course the riots which have taken place. And a lot in the news about Israeli, what the media calls Israeli settlers, taking what they call revenge, in terms of riots. But we don't, and obviously we don't condone
any violence,
whatsoever. But it's important to try and understand some of the, the backstory as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, last week we had the Israeli security forces doing various arrests in various towns which are Palestinian, strongholds of Palestinian terror. I think, was it Nablus?
Nablus,
Nablus.
That was the main place they did it last week. I think the week before it was Jenin or something. So what's been happening recently is there's been a lot of tension with the new Israeli government. There's been sort of like the Palestinians have used the new Israeli government's positions to kind of incite violence. And so the Palestinian Authority have been, kicking up a storm. There's a new terror group in the region, which is the Lion's Den terrorists. They've been carrying out attacks. And so January and February, we saw two horrific attacks take place in Israel. The first one was the synagogue shooting in just outside of Jerusalem, or just inside Jerusalem, I think, where 7 Israelis were killed, one of them a 13-year-old boy. And these were just Israeli civilians at a synagogue or just outside a synagogue, and they were targeted because they were Jews.
Yes.
And so the response from the Israelis was, right, we need to capture the terrorists who did this. And so they did a raid. They captured some terrorists. Some of those terrorists were killed in the operation. There was a heavy gun battle between them. And then that sparked more furor because basically as Palestinian terrorists were killed, they are called heroes in their community, and that caused more violence, which then resulted in a car ramming at a bus stop where a Palestinian rammed his car into civilians at a bus stop, killing 3 people. 2 of them were brothers, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. And again, these are these are civilians being targeted by terrorists. They have done nothing wrong. They are not legitimate targets.
And that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear about the terror attacks against Israel, it is civilians.
Yes.
And it's indiscriminate.
Yeah.
And it
They're
could
targeted
include
because they're Jews.
They're Jews, yes, yeah. And from the Palestinian terrorists, it actually doesn't matter to them either if they are Israeli Arabs as well among them, because they are there, they're targeting, it's indiscriminate, and yet when Israel then does their carries out their arrests, they are being strategic, they are working based on intelligence.
Yes.
They are going into areas, yes, where there might be retaliation, but they're going there to hunt out the terrorists.
Yes. And these are terrorists in all respects. Like, they are members of outlawed terror groups, even in the West. So it would be the same as if the UK or US were going and dealing with ISIS, that kind of thing.
And last week you put a photo on social media of a number of the terrorists which were actually killed. And by the way, they went in there, the Israeli security forces, to arrest them.
Yes.
But because of the gun battle which ensued, they were killed. The photos you put on were what you would, if you were to imagine a terrorist being dressed.
Yes.
They were terrorists. They were terrorists. Yes. And yet the media last week was absolutely appalling. Much of the media, I should say, was appalling. Not Israeli media, but the media in in this country and in the US, much of the media was portraying these as just ordinary, innocent, even using the words children, which actually obviously...
And there was a child. But he was armed with a weapon shooting at Israelis. Yeah. He was 16
which is absolutely tragic. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of, the young lives which are being indoctrinated and caught up in this and used, for these purposes, absolutely tragic on every level. But that context is not portrayed by the media at all. And so last week we had the UK government, the US government, all condemning Israel's actions.
Yeah. And it's absurd.
It was absurd. And there was such a I say battle, in terms of battle in the media, going on last week, that we then had on, I think, was it Friday night or was it Thursday night, we had the Palestinian riots, which were taking place, and those were taking place, and I believe they were taking place, or they were given fuel, they were energized because Western governments and Western media was not portraying the facts correctly.
Yeah, and they were weak.
And
also, they weren't even weak; they were strong against Israel and weak against the Palestinians. And the thing we have to bear in mind, like, when Israel goes into places like Nablus to arrest these people, it's like they go in very quickly. They are experts. They are going in targeted, they've got their specific targets. They go in there quickly. But when the Palestinians realize what's going on, they get attacked from all angles. And the problem happens is you have... within these situations where there's a lot of action going on, you're going to have people get injured accidentally. However, from the videos that I've seen, and from the research I've done, the research that other people have done, which I've looked at, I mean, there were 10 Palestinians that were killed during that operation. 7 of them are terrorists. 3 of them were civilians. And the 3 of them who were killed, it seems that they were bystanders or something like that. There is video footage of literally, say, 30 Palestinians standing around a gunman firing automatic weapons at Israelis. And it's surprising the Palestinian terrorist didn't shoot one of his own friends, let alone Israel shooting him and not hurting someone else. So these are situations where it is there's a lot of people in a small area. The bystanders are on the terrorist side, and even a lot of the bystanders become active terrorists against Israel because they'll start throwing Molotov cocktails, throwing rocks, helping the terrorist who's been injured, pulling them away and stuff. You know, there's a lot of mayhem and madness that goes on. Yeah. And some of the injuries I saw, because there was around 100 people, 110 people who were injured, but a lot of those injuries were either self-inflicted or were, because, for example, there was a terrorist who jumped off a building, broke his leg. There's a video of it. He's got a gun. He's still firing, things like that. Like, that's hit one of the injured. He broke his own leg because he jumped off a building while he was shooting at Israelis and trying to avoid them, sort of thing. It's that kind of thing that happens. There was a video of the Israeli troops leaving the area, and I'm not kidding, there's like 1,000 rocks being thrown at them by 200 people. One of those people falls over in the video and you see he hurts himself. Some of the injuries are going to be from rocks hitting other Palestinians because it's just such a sort of intense situation. And then what you have as a result is what you were saying. The US, they come out and instead of saying, we condemn terrorism, we condemn violence, they start to say, we feel sorry for this situation.
They took the bait.
They took the bait,
essentially.
Yeah.
And what it does when the West fails, when the international community fails to condemn Palestinian terror, and it does slander Israel's name and reputation. That actually brings risk to Jews and Israelis worldwide.
100%.
And we've seen that through a number of situations where there's been upheaval in Israel, but also increases the risk of retaliatory attacks. But I think one of the most important things is that if the international community doesn't come down strong on Palestinian terror, then actually it legitimizes the voice of those terror groups among ordinary Palestinians who want a voice. And if they think that, well, actually, Israel is getting international condemnation, we must be on the right side. Yeah. Actually, you can see how that very quickly spreads. And the group which has been mentioned is the Lion's Den group. Now, we heard that name, Lion's Den, a couple of months ago. And they were, I think, perhaps portrayed as being quite a small outfit, a bit out on the wings. Yeah. But on Thursday, on the riots, the hundreds of supporters which were filtering onto the streets were in support of Lion's Den. So they are a bigger outfit than perhaps we might think. Do you want to just explain so the makeup of that and why we should be?
Well, with Lion's Den, I mean, I'm no expert on them, but they came into being about let's say 4 months ago or something. It was probably just before Christmas, I think, that they started to make headlines, and it was because they were carrying out lone wolf attacks, and the Israeli authorities were finding actually they couldn't work out who was carrying out these attacks, and it turned out they were Lion's Den supporters, and Lion's Den is almost like an amalgamation of other groups. Like, it's kind of like ISIS. It's maybe they're not as extreme, but they're carrying out similar attacks like that. So it's lone wolf attacks. It's mainly young Palestinians. They're normally between they're sort of late teens, early 20s kind of thing. And they're carrying out these attacks because they feel that the main terror groups, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Al-Quds Brigade and things, they're not doing enough. They're not carrying out enough attacks. So then Lion's Den is becoming the group where they carry out these attacks. And when Israel is dealing with Lion's Den, like, I have compared them to ISIS. I know they're not exactly the same, but when you look at, say, America, the coalition forces when dealing with ISIS, like, we were, the coalition forces killed around 85,000 ISIS members, not fighters, active shooters, members, women, children, everything. The world did not condemn the coalition forces for taking out ISIS, and yet Israel is taking out Lion's Den terrorists who are actively shooting. These aren't civilians or women and children.
In neighbourhood areas as well.
Yes, in neighbourhood areas.
Not in some military
exactly.
camp.
Yes, and they're not just literally bombing a whole town.
No.
Like, that's what coalition forces were doing. They were taking out full-on towns, women and children, everything. No condemnation. Israel pinpoints terrorists who are armed with assault rifles shooting at them, and Israel is being condemned for it. And that is the thing you need to remember. Like, there's not too much difference between ISIS and Lion's Den. In fact, if ISIS
I'm sure coalition forces would say, though, that they were doing pinpointed...
Yeah, I probably shouldn't,
pinpointed...
Yes.
Intelligence-based
of course.
attacks.
But at the same time, there is enough evidence out there that shows, in order for them to sometimes have to break down some ISIS strongholds,
under international law as well.
And and actually, killing civilians in war is not actually an illegal act of war. People think that any civilian death is actually illegal under international law. It's not. It's true. You just have to limit the number.
But I thought I should just add that.
Yeah, of course.
And also because as you just make on that point, Israel does its very best.
100%.
And they are probably the best at avoiding civilian casualties because of the technology that they have, but not just the technology, the values,
morals,
and the morals that it has.
So
I think right now there's a lot happening. There's perhaps happening right now as we're recording it in terms of the unrest. So we just need to have that on our radar, that especially in our prayers as well, definitely. That there will just be peace. We're supposed to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. That there'll be peace. There'll be calm. That innocent people, including those Palestinians who want to live in peace, will be able to live in peace. But that there will just be some calm, and that lives will be preserved. But Israel has got to do what it has to do in order to defend itself.
Yeah.
Can we move on to Iran?
We can. Yep.
Because I would say last week when we did our content, I think we both said that right now we have probably never been in such a serious position in terms of Iran as we are now.
Exactly.
I mean, some of the things which were happening last week and have continued into this week should have us awakened and alert to what is actually happening, the threat from Iran, I mean. And there are a number of things. And the first thing, I think, was the news last week that emerged, or was confirmed, I should say, last week, regarding how the UK intelligence that confirmed that the Iranian regime were mapping out potential targets in the UK of Israelis and Jews that would be attacked in the event that Israel took military action against Iran. Now, this came about quite incredibly by a Jewish woman that infiltrated the Iranian regime in fact, I read her story, and she had an appointment with the supreme leader, had to sit on the floor, not speak until she was spoken to. It had, I mean, not quite parallels with Esther. Let's not, it's not an exact parallel with Esther, but I could not help but think it was for such a time as this moment. Yeah. She was, and they didn't know, the regime didn't know that she was Jewish.
Yeah.
She was French, by the way. And I think she had some sort of contact through her occupation that managed to give her the privilege. But she sat there, and she was told from the horse's mouth about this plot, or not a plot, but this plan that would be executed in the event that Israel was to attack Iran. And so she heard this. Now she passed, harrowing, and she passed this on to the various authorities. And I would imagine for her personally, being a Jewish lady as well, this would have been really unsettling. But she passed it on, and UK government have confirmed exactly what she reported. Yeah, exactly. I think it was an exclusive in one of the Jewish newspapers.
I think the Jewish Chronicle had it. Yeah.
I think the Jewish Chronicle had it. But it was confirmed, and the UK government has basically said it is correct and it is as serious as it sounds.
Exactly.
That's kind of the words they used.
Yeah, I mean, when I read the speculation, it was shocking. Yeah. When the government confirmed it, it was like, wow. Like, the fact that the Iranian regime is paying British criminal gangs to literally spy on Jews in the UK, to map out their locations, and especially Jewish leaders and prominent Israeli organizations, and also obviously Iranian dissidents, Iranians who are now in the UK who are against the regime. They've basically mapped out their locations, preparing for terror attacks against them. Just think about that. I mean, this is British civilians who the Iranian regime is now looking at killing or at least hurting. But and yet this is a regime who we're meant to be dealing with, sending them billions of pounds a year kind of thing. And like, there's no other country, I think, that is mapping out Jews or mapping out any other people group in this country and aiming to kill them. I mean, it's an insanely eye-opening and shocking, and it's a scary.
And Iran is apparently using criminal gangs in the UK for that. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, obviously, this will affect people, and it's okay for us to say, well, let's not have fear. But actually, we appreciate, and there might be people listening who are Jewish, who are Israeli, living in the UK, and will be concerned. And so, what I would like to say is that, as Christians who love Israel and we love the Jewish people, we will stand with you. And we will do everything that we can. We will pray, and we will do everything that we can within our capacity and within our actions to make a stand and to not back down.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not much we can do as CUFI. All we can do really is raise awareness. Yeah. We can do a lot really, because we can ask Christians to pray, and I think prayer is a big thing. But of course, there will be some people who are fearful, because it's a very real threat. I mean, we have to take Iran seriously, because, this isn't them who released the information. They're not telling people because they're trying to stop Israel do something. Yeah. They were planning this regardless of whether Israel knew it or not. And so,
years ago, when we were discussing the threat from Iran, and we used to see the pictures from Tehran, and we used to see the supporters of the regime, let's put it that way, walking over the Israel flag and burning the British flag in the streets. And we were saying, look, if we do not make a stand against Iran today, it will not be long before Israelis and Jews are at risk on our own shores.
Yeah.
And here we are today discussing this, and not only does it sound as though Iran, the regime, has eyes and ears on the ground here, but is also becoming an increasingly military threat over here. And one of the things you said, well, what can we do to make a stand against Iran? Here at CUFI, we've been calling for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the militia arm of the Iranian regime, to be banned.
Yeah.
Because it isn't prescribed yet, and we've been calling it to be prescribed, not just to send a message of rebuke to the Iranian regime, but to actually make it more difficult for them to operate.
Exactly. And
to make its supporters and operatives more difficult to function, etc., etc. It does actually have an impact if we prescribe the regime and offshoots of the regime, etc. So that's something we've been calling for. Now, last week, there were reports in the media that the Biden administration is urging the UK not to ban the IRGC.
Yeah.
And their reason, apparently, if this is true, the reason for that is because they believe that the UK and Europe are sort of like the last post that will, the last channel, let's put it that way, to be able to negotiate with Iran. However, the US have already prescribed Iran. The US has already prescribed.
Yeah.
The US has already prescribed.
Yeah.
Iran.
The
IRGC
Yeah.
Under President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered what your thoughts were about whether or not the Biden administration has a case about that. But what we do know, according to the reports, is that it has caused a division within the UK government.
Right. Okay.
Because the Home Office is apparently wanting to prescribe the IRGC, and the Foreign Office is not.
Right.
And the person who has that final say is the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak.
Right.
But apparently there is that division at the moment in Whitehall. So will they go down the route of take the US alleged advice, the Biden administration advice, and not ban, or will they go ahead and ban it? It might be interesting, especially in light of what we have heard last week about, the threat.
Jews in the UK.
You can understand why they are treading very carefully, but what's your take on that?
I don't know really. I mean, I didn't actually know about the split between the Foreign Office and the Home Office, and so
apparently,
well, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, we know with the Foreign Office they are very much a Chamberlain and not a Churchill in dealing with these things. So they often will say they're being diplomatic, but actually they're fairly weak on the British foreign policy is fairly weak, really, especially when it comes to countries like Iran. I don't know if Biden or the Biden administration is correct in saying that. And I think there's a few things we need to consider. It's like, I mean, first of all, are they right? Like, what if the UK can be a moderator between Israel and Iran, or the West and Iran? Is it worth us staying on their good side? The other thing is, what message does it send to Iran? If we're nice to Iran and yet they still carry out, I mean, they're still mapping out targets in the UK. I mean, we obviously don't know as well how much of this in private is known. For example, the the UK government confirmed that they know this is happening. Was that because they were made aware of it last week, or have they known it for months? Are they in negotiations with Iran not to do that? Has Israel provided any intelligence on these sorts of things? We don't know the behind the scene things going on, and I'm sure countries talk to each other a lot more than we know in public. So they speak, more in private than we know in public. In all honesty, I don't know. My preference would be that we shut down terrorist groups in the UK, regardless of who they are, and the IRGC, in my opinion, is a terrorist group, and so therefore we shouldn't allow them to operate, and we should make it as difficult as possible for their people to operate. Whereas right now we do know that there are organisations, even some charities, that have links to the IRGC and to the Iranian regime operating in the UK. And these are organisations which, can receive donations, can claim tax money from the government. There's a lot of complications there which aren't actually very good for the UK, I think.
No, but we have made similar policies regarding Hezbollah,
which is Iranian
Hamas,
controlled.
So there is, and those that has actually been in recent years. So we know that it is we know it is possible, but as you say, there are political issues now. Obviously, the other thing, just regarding the threat from Iran, we heard last week about the new figure that has been released from the UN watchdog, which oversees the nuclear development, and their nuclear enrichment has now reached 84%.
Yes. So and it's important to point out this is not speculation. This is the United Nations inspectors from the the International Atomic Energy Agency. And they are the ones who discovered that within Iranian nuclear sites, they have discovered 84% enriched uranium. And
can you put that into some perspective? Because 84%.
What does that mean?
It sounds like we're almost at 100%. But can you just explain? Because this is significant. This is not, when we talk about uranium enrichment, we're talking about a level which is far, far above any kind of uranium enrichment that would be used for civilian energy purposes.
Exactly.
So let's not be hoodwinked to think, okay, they're developing this because they need energy, and they've chosen nuclear energy, and this is all part of that. That passed a long time ago, and let's face it, we've always known that was Iran's plan.
Yes.
But the key figure is 90%.
Yeah. Well,
am I right?
Yes. So basically, for weapons grade uranium, the magic number is 90%. The highest grade ever produced in any country known is 97%.
Right.
So you don't need 100% to make a bomb. It's not that way it works. When it comes to civilian power, it basically is 20% or less. So think about that.
Yeah.
They've not just gone 20%, 25%, 30%. They've gone 84%.
Yeah.
One thing you may not know about is at 84% they are able to make a bomb. So there is actually a misconception, really, because people say weapons grade is 90%. Well, the first ever atomic bomb used was Little Boy, which was dropped on Hiroshima in Japan in 1945 during World War II. That was made with 80% uranium enriched. Enrichment. So think about that.
Yeah. They've
got 84%. Little Boy was made with 80%. Now, there are some caveats to that. For example, they may have 84% enriched uranium, but how much of it do they have? Do they have a big enough amount to make a bomb? And the other thing to bear in mind is if, for example, Iran was going to make another Little Boy and bomb Israel, well, it would never reach Israel because it would be so big. It would be on such a slow, heavy plane that Israel would shoot it out of the sky before it got near them. So in modern day warfare, it's not really effective to use those sorts of atomic bombs anymore. What they really need is to be able to produce a nuclear warhead that can fit on a missile and can be fired at a rapid speed towards their target. They are much harder to intercept. So basically, theoretically, they can make a bomb. In practical terms, they can't really make a bomb right now, but they are 6% away from 90%. And as you said, Iran has always said this is just for civilian purposes. We're not doing this to build a bomb. There is absolutely no reason at all for them to be at 84% unless they're building a bomb. And we know because a couple of years ago, we saw that presentation from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and there was that amazing operation where Israeli spies stole a lot of information from Iran and revealed clear as day that Iran was planning a nuclear weapon. And that's their plan all along. There is a reason why we've got the nuclear, what's it called? The nuclear deal, the JCPOA. The West knows that Iran is trying to build a bomb. Iran is not fooling anyone. Yeah. But the West doesn't seem... it doesn't seem...
Do you think it's missed the boat? Is it too late to stop Iran, do you think?
Well, this is the problem because the original Iran deal wasn't strong enough to stop Iran in the first place. It was it was a pipe dream really to think that was going to work. And yet it was sold to us by our Western governments that we've stopped them building a bomb. Well, it didn't stop them. They carried on. It seems the only way... Well, there's a couple of ways that they will stop. The first is if the Iranian regime just goes, okay, we don't want to nuke Israel, and they stop building the bomb. That is the best case scenario, because ultimately we don't want Israel to be attacked. We don't want them to get a bomb. We don't want a war between Iran and Israel. We want
Although
peace.
we know it's ideologically fueled.
We probably can't convince them with a conversation.
Yeah. So that's option one.
Option two is the military option. And so... Well, there's actually three options now I think about it. Yeah, the second option is actually the
regime change.
Well, that's option 4.
Okay. Well, hang on. Okay, you put us on suspense. Come back next week for Okay, so
there's actually probably going to be about 25 options by the end of this conversation.
So what's option 2 then?
So option 2 would actually be a diplomatic response. So, for example, a new deal gets signed. It's a stronger deal. Yeah. It puts sanctions on them if they try and get a bomb.
Yes.
But it has some benefits to Iran if they don't try and get a bomb. So actually coax them out of it nicely. Yeah. Third option, I guess, would be military intervention.
Which would be probably from Israel.
And alone or with the US. I think Israel is probably prepared to do anything. Yeah. It is prepared to do anything to stop Iran.
Yeah.
They don't want to bomb Iran. They don't want to start a war.
No.
But if that's the only way to stop them, Israel's going to take that option.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of different options. Best case scenario is the Iranians just say, we're not going to do this anymore. Yeah. Second best would be another deal of some sort. But to be honest with you, that's not on the table right now.
No.
All government officials from the US, from Europe and things are saying, even our own government, they're basically saying it's not on the table. This isn't going to happen. So right now, what we're staring at is possible military intervention.
Yeah. So lots to pray for regarding the threat from Iran.
Yeah.
And we can't talk about Iran without talking about their support for Russia in their invasion and attack on Ukraine, because Iran has been providing drones to Russia, weaponized drones, and last week the UN ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the UN. He said this. He said, first of all, he announced, he didn't just announce, he repeated, I should say, that Israel's going to be providing Ukraine very soon with an anti-missile system.
Okay.
From Israel. He also said that Ukraine has been a testing ground for Iran.
Yeah.
Now, over the weekend, there was also a report that apparently it is looking likely that Russia is going to be providing Iran with fighter jets.
Mm.
So here we see a strengthening of ties, which have ties were there prior to the war in Ukraine, but a strengthening of ties between Russia and Iran, which would now seem to be reciprocal. And so
and also as well, there's other people within that, like for example China. There's been joint military operations between Iran, Russia, and China. South Africa as well, I think, have been involved. It's an interesting one really, because I did read as well that Russia is actually going to be housing manufacturing. So basically the Iranian experts in drone technology are going to be going to Russia and actually building drones inside Russia, but using Iranian technology and Iranian expertise. And that's the thing. Iran has actually made itself quite adept at building drones. And I think they call them suicide drones, don't they? They're drones that sort of. And it's been sort of bad news for the Ukrainians because they've been having to deal with this new form of attack that they're not used to. And ultimately, it just shows, I mean, if we're talking through our, the biblical lens, it is a concern when you have these countries working together, because we know in end time theology that, they'll be working together against Israel. And so, this is definitely something we need to pray about. I think, like you said, it's a testing ground for Iran. The more expertise Iran gets when it comes to taking out, basically they're going to use this on Israel, is what I'm trying to say. The thing we need to remember is Iran surrounds Israel on almost all sides. They've got Hezbollah in the north. They fund terror groups within Gaza and also the West Bank. And so, for example, these drones, after they've been perfected, they could be ending up in the terrorists' hands that Iran controls, and then using them against Israeli civilians, or against Israelis, I should say, in future wars and things. So it is troubling because the better that Iran gets, the more of a danger they are to Israel.
And if we do, we sort of arrive at full circle when we look at the terrorist intentions of the Iranian regime. We see that they're a threat to Iran, a threat to Israel, a threat to Ukraine, a threat to Israelis and Jews in the UK and to the West.
To the West in general,
and also to their own people, because we do recognise that the Iranian people, many do not subscribe to their to the beliefs of the regime, and in fact there are many who support Israel or are just nominal and neutral and want to live in peace. So so these are a few. I mean, these are key things, and they're all linked. In a way, we have to stand up to the Iranian regime, stand up to terror, stand with Israel, and not be silent.
Yeah, definitely.
So
there's another aspect as well that we've not spoken about, and that's the attacks on shipping lanes by Iran. And so you can see Iran is actually sort of like, and I mean, if we want to go more into it, I won't talk about it in depth, but for example, we know that Hezbollah operates within South America with the drug cartels and with drug trades into Europe and America. Basically, Iran has its hands on a lot of shady things. And
Israel actually increased their the alert level in the Red Sea last week.
Yes.
And that, I believe it was because there was an Israeli-owned vessel which was attacked, I think, beginning of February. Yeah,
it was hit by a drone or a bomb or something. It didn't cause enough damage to stop it or anything like that, but it was clearly, this is a civilian vessel that was attacked. I mean, bearing in mind as well, if this did, if it was an oil tanker and there was an oil spillage, there could be obviously a environmental disaster.
Yes,
This is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. There are, products from that area go to the whole world.
yeah.
So if Iran starts to cause trouble like it was last year,
Yeah.
it can really affect the world. And so this, unfortunately, I mean, the Iranian regime seems to use the only weapon it has is terrorism, and it uses terror everywhere. It terrorizes shipping vessels. It terrorizes Jewish civilians in the UK. It terrorizes the Ukrainians with suicide drones. That's the thing they have. The threats against Israel, it's terror because, for example, they fund terror groups around Israel, and they're trying to build a bomb to destroy Israel. Everything they're doing is not, bringing good to the world. They're basically doing everything they can to destroy. And it's such a sad thing because there is, we're men of peace. There is no reason for this war at all. And yet, we see with Israel is constantly just having to defend itself from people who want to destroy her. Israel is not the aggressor in any of these things. Israel is just defending itself. And it has to, because of radical ideologies and radical regimes and people who are just, hell-bent on trying to destroy Israel and the Jewish people. And that's never going to happen.
No, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And, God is faithful to keep his word, faithful to keep his promises. He keeps all of his promises. And we must pray, because prayer is a powerful weapon, more powerful than anything the Iranian regime is developing.
Definitely.
And so we must have faith. These are days of faith, times of faith.
Yep.
And we must, I was, as we close, the scripture which I just wanted to share, which is Isaiah 62, and of course the title of this podcast, For Zion's Sake.
Yep.
So this is a key verse. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not remain quiet, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. So, we mustn't keep silent. We must continue to speak out.
Yep,
there are some things we can do. I hope that what we've shared today will equip us as we pray. There's a lot of points, but pray for the Jewish community here in the UK. Pray for Israel as it deals with its internal upheaval, and particularly the threat that is posed from Palestinian terrorism. Pray for Israel's responses to the regional threat, particularly from Iran. Pray also regarding this issue we were talking about facing the Ukraine with this Russia-Iran alliance, and pray that our leaders will have wisdom. We mentioned about the alleged division that there is in Whitehall between the Foreign Office and Home Office regarding Iran, and I think you quite rightly say that has probably been a pattern for some time, I would imagine, when it comes to Israel-related things. Let's pray that there will be unity, but unity which is based upon truth.
Yes.
We have started this, as I said at the beginning. We've started this podcast because we were talking anyway about the stories of the week and the issues facing us, so that we could iron out and really try and understand the direction that we should take as content producers, but primarily because we want to get to the truth.
Yep, definitely. Because
it is the truth which is going to win, and it's the truth which is going to see some of these things. And when we discover the truth, when we get to the truth, we will end up standing with Israel. Because that's where the truth leads us.
Definitely.
So thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward. I hope that you will share this with friends, and that you will join us next time on the CUFI UK podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.